There we go. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Paige Bradley with Women's Empowerment. Thank you so much for being with us again for our fourth in WE's new Lunch and Learn briefing series, today with our partner in Puerto Rico. Proyecto Matria is an awesome organization that we are so privileged to have been partnered with since 2019. Matria is led by a visionary and tireless woman, Amarilis Jimenez, who you will hear from shortly. And we also have WE's president, Debbie McGraw, with us, who will also speak to you shortly, as well as several WE board members and so many wonderful supporters. So we're just super grateful to you for making the effort to be with us again today. I'm so happy to see that with each subsequent briefing that we're doing, we seem to be attracting more and more people, which tells me that hopefully you're getting something positive and inspiring and important out of these calls. It's really our chance to share with you as directly as we can now these days the important work that you are supporting. So we're just grateful to you for continuing to make joining us a priority. We have done 3 previous calls with our partners, and those recordings are available to any of you who would like to see them. We will be doing our next call with our partner in Haiti, Foncosé, and that will be on Friday, April 30th, also at 12 noon. So we hope you will join us for that, and you will be receiving an announcement about that very soon. So just a couple housekeeping items. For those who've joined us before, you know that we ask you to keep yourselves on mute, which you're doing, so we can have uninterrupted audio. We have Amarilis and Isabel joining us, and they will be sharing directly a number of photos and some video that will really bring their important work to life. Today's call feels really urgent and so important because of the nature of the news coverage that we don't tend to get here in the US. Many of you may well be feeling like you don't even know how the pandemic has affected women and families in Puerto Rico. And I can't think of a better person to share it with you than Amarilis. In addition to their incredibly important work empowering women entrepreneurs, they're also at the forefront of human rights work and feminist work on the island, and they bring just a really comprehensive perspective and true leadership to everything that they do there as advocates in Puerto Rico. So we love this partnership and are grateful to you for supporting it. You all know that it is only because of your financial support that Women's Empowerment's mission continues to have an impact, and we as an organization continue to thrive. So thank you for investing in these partnerships as you do, and for continuing that support as we move ahead through these difficult days of recovery. We all know that countries and here in the US and around the world, places that have the least are impacted the hardest. And that extends to every aspect of life. So the most that we can do is stand strong with our partners, and you make that possible. So thank you for that. And again, thank you for being here. So I'm going to turn it over now to WE's president, Debbie McGraw, who has some background to share with you on the partnership, and will then introduce Amarilis. Debbie.
Thank you, Paige.
I think you will appear now.
Oh, that was an interesting voice.
Ominous.
Jake said hi.
Well, as we're waiting, it's just such a pleasure to be here, whether you can see me or not, with our friends from Proyecto Matria in Puerto Rico. In 2018, we pulled a committee together to look for potential new WE partners. We started by identifying geographic areas we were interested in, and a number of WE supporters told us that Puerto Rico was an area of real interest, particularly following the devastating 2017 Hurricane Maria and the government's very poor job managing the disaster relief. Thanks to Rhea Kuhlman, who was on our committee, Proyecto Matria was identified early as an organization to research. We read press articles about Matria and we looked at their website. We then reached out to them to find out if they would be a good fit. In 2019, we entered into a pilot partnership to provide a grant supporting their 13-year-old program, Libera. Libera is a business incubation program targeting women in rural Puerto Rico mostly, who are in gender-based violence situations and/or are housing insecure. As a group, those women had little education, low access to transportation, no employment, and limited family or community support. Our initial grant was to provide seed funding necessary to start up businesses that the women had planned through Matria's educational program. Sadly for us, and in spite of the yeoman's efforts of Patty Jacobs, the liaison to the project at the time, we were never able to go and visit the program in person. I think the first problem that ended the first planned trip was a earthquake, and then we re-engaged the trip and we were ready to go, and COVID was looming. So unfortunately, we didn't get there yet. Since 2019, Puerto Rico has continued to grapple with old and new challenges, including crippling public debt, earthquakes, and now, of course, COVID. The result has been a worsening situation for employment, the closure of hundreds of public schools, and increasing poverty. Generally, all of these impact women the most. This has meant for Matria that the potential for the success of new enterprises under Libera has really eroded. The barriers to success are just too great for most women. Because of this deteriorating situation, Matria has reimagined their program and is in the process of creating Arepa Chic, which you'll hear about today. Arepa Chic is a social enterprise and micro-franchise program that is expected to better address the needs and issues of the women in the program. We is excited to be a partner with Matria as they launch this new program, and I'm pleased to turn the program over to Amarilis Pagan Jimenez, the Executive Director and co-founder of Proyecto Matria. Let me introduce her to you. Those of you who attended our last in-person gala back in October of 2019 will remember that Amarilis was there in person to take part in a panel discussion about WE partnerships. Amarilis is a JD as well as a certified business incubator administrator. Besides leading Proyecto Matria, Amarilis is significantly engaged in public efforts to improve the conditions for women and other marginalized populations in Puerto Rico. At the present time, she is a member of the special committee appointed by the governor of Puerto Rico to address the state of gender-based violence, which was identified as an emergency situation there early this year. Amarilis, it's all yours now.
Thank you, Debbie and Paige. I am really happy to be with you today. Also happy to hear about Patty and other marvelous women that I met when I went to see you in person. Well, I have some photos to share with you, so I will share my screen. Okay, here we are. 2020 was a year marked by COVID-19, so we will speak here about how this new world, in which being a woman, especially head of household, is a permanent challenge. Our participants are stronger than ever because the circumstances force them to deal with hunger, anxiety, lack of employment, abandonment of the state, and uncertainty. Fortunately, the strengths and skills developed in their work with Proyecto Matria enabled them to rise to the challenge. In the past year, or in the last month, they have been dealing with some of the things that Debbie just told you, but there is a special context that I would like to share with you today. Puerto Rico's public debt is a debt that has been accumulating in the past decades. But since 2008, our government just had to admit that Puerto Rico's public debt was out of control and that this would have a direct impact in essential public services for women in Puerto Rico and for every people that lives in a vulnerable community. It was not until 2016 and Promesa that our country, our island, had to face the worst part of the austerity measures in public expenditures. Since 2016, public services have been reduced, public schools have been closed, and the budgets of agencies such as the Economic Development Department suffered huge cuts to programs aimed to serve people with low income. Hurricane Maria certainly was a great disaster for us here in Puerto Rico. It showed us the fragility of our health system and the water and electricity infrastructure. Governmental response was deficient, and many small businesses paid the consequences of not having an emergency plan to survive by themselves. In fact, about 25% of small businesses in the island have closed in the past years, and that number increased with COVID-19 and the measures that we had to take to control the virus in the island. In addition to that, we know that poverty increased in the island. In the US Census of 2010, about 45% of our population lived under poverty level. And after that, we know that the percentage increased. Some studies say that up to 70% of the population in some areas of the island are living on the poverty level. So that is a big number, especially in rural areas. And you know, where there is poverty, there are also women, head of household, suffering the consequences of poverty. That means lack of access to health services, to transportation, as David said, and also all the precarious conditions that comes with the poverty, because poverty is not only not having money, it's also not having access to all the human rights that we deserve as women and as persons. COVID-19 closed our schools. They are still closed, schools in the island. So women are in their homes, taking care of their children and also serving as teachers, because our education system tried to work in a remote mode, but they do not have the infrastructure to guarantee a good education for students. So mostly what is happening is that teachers give homework to the students, and there are the mothers doing the work of the teachers, trying to maintain their children studying while they are at home. A lot of working spaces were closed, and the ones that are open with very bad conditions of work. And very bad conditions, I mean that they are part-time jobs. So, you know, nobody lives with a part-time job that do not provide what we name the cost of living wage, which in Puerto Rico is approximately $24,000 a year for a family of three people. And in Puerto Rico, most of the families live with about $15,000 a year. When you have a part-time job, it means having only about $7,000, $8,000 a year working part-time. So imagine that for women that are head of household. And with all these situations, the profile of our participants have been changing, and that is important to know. Our original participants' profile included women without formal education, Some of them didn't know how to write or read or use mathematical skills. But now we also have participants that have university studies, even master's degrees, but they are as poor as women without education. Okay, they do not have jobs, they do not have safe roof, they do not have essential services for them. So in the past year, we try to respond to all those situations with our participants and the communities. And we work to maintain our vouchers in the permanent and transitional housing programs. We were paying for the home of about 50 participants around the island. We also worked to maintain the operation of our business incubation program, Libera. We not only had the 30 participants that we have active at the moment of COVID, but we also work with about 57 participants from previous years that had their businesses operating, and we didn't want them to close because of the COVID. So we worked with them also. We maintain our recovery work in Miraflores. The image you are seeing is part of our women's group in Orocovis. That is a presentation. So there are participants from the project, but also visitors from other foundations and organizations in Puerto Rico. Of course, that was pre-COVID-19, because nowadays we cannot have that kind of meetings. But that is in Miraflores. We also work with the children in Miraflores, because we know that working with children is also working with the women of the community. That is an agricultural summer camp we have with students, with children in Miraflores. And we also continue our work of reconstruction of homes that we began before COVID-19. The woman you're seeing is about 78 years old. She is Kunda, it's her name. And we repaired her home. And the sign says something like, this house is better. It's better than before. I don't know how to translate that, Isabel. Maybe it's better than ever.
It's better than ever. Yes.
Yeah, this house is better than ever. So because we were repairing, we repaired about 15 homes in Miraflores. We still have one in our list. And we want to make an update about Arepa Chic, but first I want to speak to you about 3 of our participants of the first year or partnership with Women Empowerment. We gave seed capital to about 7 participants, and part of the donation was used also to work in Arepa Chic. From those participants, the first one that you saw here, this is Janet Ocasio. She had seed capital, and also she had a microloan. With that money, she equipped her kitchen, and she completed the requirements to have the operating permits required in the island. She was originally a baker, but she expanded her business to catering services. And in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis, she found a different niche by using special packaging for her products. So she's doing pretty well at this moment. This is Sully Roman. She has a micro business named Mommy's Spa. And there, you know, she's a survivor of gender-based violence and also of discrimination, racial discrimination, because yes, in Puerto Rico, we have racism. She's a mother of a child, and despite the limitations of raising alone, our support allowed her to take her original idea to the next level and expand her service offering. She's a doula and also a trainer in topics related to maternity and healthy living. And Margarita is this one. You see, Margarita is our spider from Miraflores. Her husband has an incapacity, so she is the main provider of her home. With our support, she improved her skills in crochet and had the opportunity to buy enough knitting yarn to create her first batch of product that she is already selling in Miraflores and around Puerto Rico. Okay. So I will show you now. Let me see. Oh, I want to mention that we created a helpline that is working 24/7, and that was a pretty good idea. We began last April. We are about to have our first year. And we work also with the distribution of food for our participants and community when the COVID-19 lockdown struck people in Puerto Rico. These are photos from Arepa Chic, but Isabel will speak to you about that. I want first to share with you a video. Let me look for it. Okay, let's see the video.
¿Qué es Arepa Chic? Somos más que arepas. Somos una puerta hacia la equidad. Arepa Chic es una empresa social gestionada desde Proyecto Matria. Desde aquí, apostamos a la creación de empleos y pequeñas empresas operadas por mujeres como una estrategia de desarrollo económico y factor de protección frente a la violencia de género. Somos un proyecto de microfranquicia que celebra la historia de las mujeres a través de la producción de arepas rellenas. Nuestras arepas tienen nombres de mujeres que han hecho historia en Puerto Rico y el planeta. Luisa, Lola, Ofelia, Ana, Simón, Evita y Frida. Nuestros postres celebran la dulzura de las victorias que las mujeres hemos alcanzado a través de la historia. En Arepa Chic estamos creando empleos dignos y además creando puntos de venta que serán operados por microempresarias de todo Puerto Rico. Estamos convencidas de que invertir en el desarrollo económico.
Sorry about that.
¿Quieres conocer más de Arepa Chic? Pues visita nuestra página web, o mejor aún, ven a probar todas nuestras arepas.
There it is. A short video about Arepa Chic, and now I want to introduce you to Isabel Ramos Hernandez. She is our Human Development Coordinator in Arepa Chic, because Arepa Chic as a social enterprise that works from a gender perspective knows that women that are working for the first time in their lives or that are head of household need more than an employment. They need additional support to deal with all the challenges that they face when beginning to work. So I will put some photos in the screen again, and Isabel will speak to you about Arepa Chic.
Hi, hello everyone. So as Amarilis was saying, I'm going to give you a bit of an update or where we're at Arepa Chic right now. As you heard, we're in a micro franchise, but right now we're still working on our main point of sales. And right now we have 6 employees working. We have a chef, an executive of sales, manager, and all the different women who are working in the making of the arepas and the client service. Our plan is to soon enough, be able to buy our first food truck, because the micro franchise is going to be that we're going to have food trucks around the island, different points. Hopefully we could get to all the towns in the island. But right now we're just focusing on the first one that we are going to buy. And for this, we'll eventually open our calls for applications for the different women who have to be like house of households and have to come from low income houses. Besides of that, there's not much more of a requirement. Most of the women, unfortunately, who come from this background have this profile are some of them are also survivors of gender-based violence, but we're not only focusing on those women. And then for all these micro franchise, we'll eventually open it up and we'll go through a process of training first, making a business plan, working on different empowerment workshops with the women that were going to be selected for the food trucks, so they can eventually establish and buy their food truck by themselves and create their whole and implement their business plans with the support that we're going to be giving them with the brand. The recipes are going to stay the same. So our points of sale, our main shop here, which is right now a sort of restaurant, will continue to be open and will be supplying to all the different food trucks and the women who buy them around the island. I know there's something else you want me to add, Amarilis, specifically?
No, maybe that the idea of, I know some of you already know about Arepa Chic, so it would be good to refresh some of the ideas that made us create Arepa Chic. And what we were seeing was that the economic panorama in the island was deteriorating not only from 2017, but before that. So we knew that we should be moving to another business development model. And we consider the fact that most of our participants are what we call entrepreneurs by necessity, meaning that they didn't want to have a business, but they had to consider a business because they had no other choice. There was no jobs in the island for them. So with Arepa Chic, we are trying to harmonize, I don't know if that word exists in English, both ideas. The security that gives to have a job, and at the same time, the liberty that give to a woman to have their own business. So we came up with the idea of a micro franchise in which we are working with the recipes, we are working with the marketing, the publicity, we are working also with the administrative structure, so that woman that wants to be women that want to be entrepreneurs can have the opportunity of doing that, but with our backup as an organization. So that is what is behind the idea of Arepa Chic. So I think that's all. Maybe you have some questions.
Yeah, now thank you so much, Amarilis and Isabel, for the information you've shared. I also just want to point out, maybe you all deduce this by watching, but Isabel is actually in the space, the future space of Arepa Chic there. So we can imagine ourselves taking kind of a mini site visit to the island now through seeing where she is. And Isabel, is it realistic for you to just kind of pan around a little bit and share the space?
Yes. Hopefully I'm in my iPad, so let me just turn the screen.
All right.
So this is space right now. We're closed. We are operating right now just because of COVID. We're gonna be doing just curbside pickup this next coming weeks. Is it kind of blurry?
A little bit, but that's okay.
Let me see if it's maybe a camera there. Yeah, so this is some of the waiting area. We usually have our manager or I sit over there so we can have like a sort of co-working space. There are different exhibitions and installations that the sales executive makes. These are darts that you can just throw it down. Let's say like human rights, I'm powerful, life, fulfilled life, my body, my choice, for example. Mm-hmm. This was one that was made for the 8th of March, which just points to the little girl who's dreaming, with all the different women in sports, in the arts and science that are pioneers here in Puerto Rico. Here, just a little bit of mess, so I'm just gonna skip through because we are organizing today. But this is where people order the arepas. And yes, this is mostly the space where people come and visit us. That's our sales executive over there. She's going into the kitchen. I might be able to show you in 1 second inside the kitchen because we're doing meal prep today. So maybe they're there.
We usually are open from Wednesday to Sunday, and Monday and Tuesday are the days in which we produce the arepas and the fillings of the arepa. And today we are reorganizing the space because we want to make some adaptations in the area of the kiosco, the area that Isabel showed you a while ago. And for the rest of the week, we will be working only with pickup and delivery service because the number of cases of COVID-19 in Puerto Rico increased enormously in the last weeks. So we are confronting a peak with the disease, and also our hospitals are getting crowded with people with COVID-19. So we decided to work only with pickup and delivery this week and maybe the next one. So we are using the time to improve the space of Arepa Chic to have a better service once we return.
Excellent. We have a couple of questions from Christy Hendrickson, who's one of our board members. For the first part, can you talk a little bit about how the women who you're assisting participate in Arepa Chic? Are they part owners of the business, or how will their roles evolve through the food trucks, etc.?
Arepa Chic will have two kind of participants. The ones that we already have are employees of Arepa Chic. They are women that are employees. The other ones, the ones that will buy the food trucks or the carts, they will be owners of their own food trucks and carts, as in a micro franchise. What we want to do with Arepa Chic is not only creating that business space for women, but we also want to eventually earn enough money to support Proyecto Matria's work. So as a social enterprise, the ganancias, the earnings,
Yeah.
the earnings of Arepa Chic will go directly to support Matria's work with other women and additional services for women in Puerto Rico. So they will be owners of their own food truck or cart, but we will also have employees as we have now in Arepa Chic.
The second part of Christy's question relates to the pandemic on the island, and specifically about vaccines. Thank you for sharing about the peak in infection that you're seeing, which I know is the case across much of the world. What are you seeing with vaccinations and the availability of those?
Well, surprisingly, I think that we are doing well with the vaccines.
Good.
We still don't know why, because it's kind of a surprise to everyone in the island. But we have about 20 to 25% of the population already vaccinated, and they are already vaccinating young people. So we began with people over 60 years, then over 50 years, and then everyone can have access to the vaccine. So I think that we are doing pretty good with that.
Well, that's excellent news. Very glad to hear that. I want to encourage any of you in our audience today, please share your questions, whether you want to unmute and ask Amarilis directly or put it into the chat. We welcome your questions. And I do have a question that was sent in advance about, we know you work with women who have experienced gender-based violence. And I know that you were integral as an organization in getting a state of emergency declared there on the island. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, after Hurricane Maria, the gender-based violence in the island increased for a lot of reasons, but mainly because in disaster scenes, it is usual to the increase in gender-based violence, and the governmental response was poor in that aspect. So since 2018, women organizations in the island were asking for the governor to decree a state of emergency in the island. It was not done until last January. In January 25, Governor Pierluisi decreed the state of emergency in the island and created a special committee that is in charge of evaluating the governmental response to gender-based violence, including violence against LGBT people, and also to propose specific actions from the government to deal not only with the intervention, but also with the prevention of gender-based violence. That committee has representatives of agencies in the government, such as the housing department, education department, justice department, women's advocate office, health department, but also have 5 organizations that are part of that special committee, and Matria is one of the organizations. I am in that committee. From there, we are using the opportunity to impulsar, Isabel, to
What are you gonna say? ¿Qué vas a decir después de eso?
impulsar una agenda.
Oh, to promote an agenda.
To promote an agenda. Yeah. An agenda with gender perspective, because we know that to prevent gender-based violence, you have to promote equity, equity as a prevention measure. So that special committee has 12 subcommittees. One of them is from economic development. In that subcommittee, Isabel is representing Matria. Another one is for security. We have one of our co-workers in Matria as part of that committee. Another one is to work with services. Another one is of public policy and legislation. And I am coordinating that subcommittee of public policy and legislation. So we kind of hacked the government committee, special committee, because we use that as an opportunity to work with other organizations, additional to the 5 that are in the committee per se, to work with all the other subcommittees and promote that agenda of equity for women. And the main argument is that if we want to prevent gender-based violence, we have to advance women's rights in all other aspects of our life.
Excellent. We certainly know from our work with you that you are so involved in many different aspects of life there and advocating for women on so many different fronts, and certainly your leadership role on committees and just out front on so many important issues. And we have a question from one of our volunteers about your marketing efforts to get the word out to women. And I'm curious about, she's curious whether what it is that you're doing to help inform women on the island, perhaps through some of these partnerships and beyond, to inform them about your programs and your services.
Yeah, when we opened our doors last October, November 2020, we used main media like television, radio, and newspaper to highlight or to present Arepa Chic to women in the island and to other people. So we had space in television, radio, and newspapers. We are using the social media, and at this moment that we are buying our first food truck, part of our marketing strategy will be using that as an excuse to go again into main media. And also we will use, once we have our food truck, we will use additional marketing strategies. We will use billboards. We will use, ¿cómo se llaman los banners? Sí. Banners in other sites, like television sites and newspaper sites, banners of Arepa Chic. And also we will promote a series of workshops and activities so that people can know about Arepa Chic. We have been a little bit limited because, you saw our space, how beautiful it is and how big. And we would like to have music and additional activities in the space, but COVID-19 has really been a challenge to us in that aspect. But we
If I
have
can add some, yeah, oh, sorry.
media.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that it's been a challenge to get the word out in the recruiting process of employees, for example. Most of it, I think, is due to COVID-19, and we've maximized our resources with social media. But we also recognize that the profile of the women that we want to target, that we're targeting, they don't necessarily have the same access to these technologies or social media. So we've been also working in alliance with other organizations in rural areas or other parts of the country, as well as other government departments. So we're constantly like checking up on that and spreading the word and just trying to use everything that is available. Also, word of mouth is what really works sometimes in most rural communities or other communities that are not in the metropolitan area.
Can you talk a little bit about what you face in terms of a technological sort of digital divide? I know that's something we're seeing with our partners in different places that, sometimes surprising the level of access that women do have. How are you finding that since so much has had to transition to virtual and online communications?
Well, one of the great challenges with COVID-19 is that everyone is moving towards technology except people living with low and very low income, especially in rural areas. So we are aware that in Puerto Rico, about 46% of the homes do not have access to internet. So that is a big number. You can see a lot of people with cell phones, but they depend on Wi-Fi to use the internet in their phones. They do not have internet by themselves. So that is something that we know and we take in account, as Isabel said. For example, I think that Isabel was today visiting stores, week stores.
Yes, he's handing out flyers in different areas of the town just to spread the word.
To stores in which mothers that have the benefit of the nutritional assistance program goes to buy their food. So Isabel was visiting those stores in Caguas today because we have so open positions in Arepa Chic still, and we want to cover them as soon as possible. And we are working at two levels, with social media, but also with a direct approach to people that do not have technology.
If we have another minute, could Isabel tell us a little bit about her role as a Human Development Officer?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Debbie. So my role is on two aspects. I support the employees because the employees of Arepa Chic are also participants of Proyecto Matria. So they have like that hybrid, they're in their hybrid position. And in that role, I help them with the psychosocial area and the development of different communication skills, interpersonal relations, life and skills that most of them sometimes lack because of different experiences and coming from poverty. And other ones, as Amarilis was saying, they have more skills because the face of poverty has changed. Even though you can be fairly well educated, you can still live in low income. You have a low income. So I help them in that way, and I also work with them in the professional development area. So most of them have different ideas on what's their future, the different goals, financial goals, since we're helping them the development of their finances. So I work in that area too with them, making budget plans, establishing exactly what are the goals that they want and organizing themselves better so they can not just go to a job by necessity, as Amarilis was saying, but also see themselves as humans who are capable of being professionals and being eventually business owners. So I work with them individually on a weekly basis. I go from the office and I'm also here in Arepa Chic most of the time. And we also work as a team. For example, last Saturday, we had a communications and conflict resolution workshop with someone that we had over. And we also do group workshops to help them be better as a group and not only individually.
Fantastic. We're so pleased to have you on the team. We are coming up against our final minute or so, and I'm hoping that we can just close with a question from Women's Empowerment's co-founder, Winifred Cox, which is just to look ahead a little bit into the future. Obviously, getting Arepa Chic off the ground post-COVID is going to be a huge priority, but if you could talk just a minute or so about what it is you envision for the organization going forward and what that future looks like.
Well, when we created the business plan for Arepa Chic, we thought about 16 points of sales throughout the island, okay, for our business women. But we are planning to have, Puerto Rico have 78 municipalities. So we want in the long term to have at least 1 point of sale in every municipality. That means that we should be able in a few years to have 78 point of sales with women entrepreneurs in charge of those point of sales. Each point of sale have the potential to create at least 2 jobs. So we are speaking of the possibility of having around 160 new jobs in the next year, if everything goes how we want it to go. That is part of our plan with Arepa Chic.
Well, we cannot thank you enough for the incredibly important work that you do and for the opportunity to partner with you. I think I speak for all of us on this call in applauding you for your leadership and innovation. Thank you. Thank you for all of it. Thank you to all of you for being with us today. We want to respect our time limit and let you go. I'm sure I'm not the only one who is feeling hungry seeing the images of your arepas there and wishing that maybe we could enjoy some lunch together. So hopefully that'll happen soon. Thank you, Amarilis and Isabel, for being with us, and to all of you for being on our call today. We hope to see you next time on April 30th with Foncaze. And wishing you a wonderful day. Thank you for your support and for all you do. Take care. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Isabel. Thanks, Amarilis.
Thank you all.
Hi, thank you.